In a shocking and tragic case out of Seattle, a 33-year-old woman, Corey Burke, is accused of brutally bludgeoning her father to death with an ice pickaxe after a seemingly trivial argument about turning off the lights in their home. What started as a family dispute escalated into an act of extreme violence, fueled by a combination of personal frustrations and political tensions. When police arrived at the scene, they found Burke in a state of disarray, covered in blood and exhibiting bizarre behavior. She reportedly told first responders it needed to happen today, suggesting that she felt the violence was an inevitable or necessary event. Before the incident, Burke had been a high-profile figure in Seattle, holding a managerial position at Blue Origin, the aerospace manufacturing company owned by Jeff Bezos. She had a reputation as a successful professional and was married to Samantha Lee Allen, a well-known transgender writer, editor, and author. Allen is also recognized for her work as the editor of Them, a Condé Nast publication focused on transgender news, and for writing Real Queer America. This book explores the stories of LGBT individuals in conservative states. However, on November 5, 2024, everything changed. Election night marked a turning point for Burke, who later stated that the results of the election, specifically the prospect of Donald Trump returning to the presidency, pushed her over the edge. She admitted to investigators that she had been emotionally overwhelmed by the outcome and the state of the country. This, coupled with her personal struggles, triggered a violent outburst at her father, 67-year-old Timothy Burke, who lived with her in their $800,000 home on the southeast side of Seattle. According to neighbors, Timothy had numerous medical conditions that often kept him confined to the house. He was described as a man who rarely left the home, which made the tragedy even more alarming. The argument that allegedly led to Timothy Burke's death began over a seemingly small issue: his refusal to turn off the lights in their home. What followed was a horrific display of violence. According to law enforcement reports, after the attack, Corey Burke sat next to her father's lifeless body, watching as he slowly died. She later clapped her hands in apparent satisfaction when first responders arrived at the scene. This unsettling detail paints a picture of a woman who is either deeply disturbed or emotionally detached from the gravity of her actions. Neighbors, hearing the commotion, had already called 911, reporting that Burke had been causing a disturbance and had smashed all the windows in the house. Officers who arrived found large shards of glass scattered across the yard and driveway, with indications that the windows had been broken from the inside. As they approached the house, officers heard clapping noises coming from within. Inside, they encountered Corey Burke in a disturbing state. She was covered in blood, and her appearance was described as disheveled, her hair matted against her face stuck to the blood on her skin. Burke had a light layer of blood on the right side of her face, under her eye, and down to her nose. A thick line of blood was also visible on her lower lip, where her hair had been stuck to the blood, further adding to the grotesque nature of the scene. Officers also noted scratches on her left hand and fingers, which were consistent with a violent altercation. Burke was wrapped in a blanket when police approached her, and when asked about the clapping sound, she simply stated that she had been clapping because she was happy. She claimed that she wasn't sure how the windows had been broken or where the blood on her face came from, but did not want the officers to enter her home. At this point, police believed that Burke's behavior was erratic and that she needed to be assessed by a mental health professional. As officers prepared to take her to the hospital for a mental health evaluation under Washington's Involuntary Treatment Act, Burke's neighbors provided more concerning information. They revealed that her father, Timothy, was inside the home, and this raised immediate alarm for the police. Fearing for his safety, officers entered the residence to perform a welfare check. They found Timothy's body in a lower-level bedroom, lying face down on the floor. His body showed signs of a violent struggle, including cuts to his head, back, and ears, as well as a bite mark on his back, suggesting that he had been subjected to a brutal and prolonged assault. Upstairs, police discovered a silver and blue ice pickaxe, which had blood on it. The weapon, later identified as the likely murder weapon, was found close to Timothy's body, confirming that it had been used in the attack. As the investigation continued, Corey Burke was taken to the hospital for evaluation. She later told investigators that she had felt reborn near her birthday on October 25th, and that she believed something important was supposed to happen on Election Day. Burke admitted that she had been feeling overwhelmed, particularly in her efforts to set boundaries with her father over his emotional state. She explained that she had been trying to change her attachment to him, as she felt hyper-focused but also disorganized in her relationship with him. However, as she recounted the events of the night, Burke became emotional, crying as she revealed that she had acted too soon. She described the moment her father began arguing with her over the lights, admitting that the argument triggered an uncontrollable response. Burke whispered to the investigator, "Will it help?" and then, after a pause, whispered, "I killed him." Burke told investigators that the culmination of the election results and the argument with her father led her to snap. She said that her father's refusal to turn off the lights triggered her, and the stress of the election pushed her over the edge. She admitted to choking her father during the attack, describing it as really effing hard at one point. She said she thought she wouldn't be able to choke him, so she resorted to biting him. Burke's statements provide insight into a woman who seemed to be in a profound emotional crisis, with her actions possibly influenced by a breakdown in her mental state. The details of this tragic case raise difficult questions about mental health, personal relationships, and the complex factors that can lead to acts of violence. While Burke's actions seem to reflect a deep cognitive and emotional breakdown, the investigation will likely explore whether these factors point to temporary insanity, a mental illness, or another psychological issue that contributed to the crime. The case is a stark reminder of how unresolved emotional issues, coupled with political and personal stress, can lead to devastating consequences. The details from the affidavit are haunting, revealing a deeply troubling series of events and statements from Corey Burke. According to the document, Burke admitted to investigators that after her father, Timothy Burke, went limp during her attack, she experienced an overwhelming sense of relief. She confessed to striking him in the head multiple times with the ice axe, ensuring that he was dead. This act was not impulsive but deliberate. Burke made sure to stay with her father, watching his final moments, until she was certain he had stopped breathing. What followed was equally perplexing. After killing her father, Burke ascended to the upper level of their home and methodically shattered all the windows, later describing this destructive act as a form of personal liberation. This sequence of events, characterized by extreme violence, calculated actions, and emotional detachment, formed the basis of her subsequent first-degree murder charge. The case has since raised a myriad of questions for both legal professionals and psychologists. To unpack its complexities, former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney Matthew Mangino shared his insights. Mangino pointed out the inherent brutality and abnormality of the crime. Using an ice axe, a rare and unusually gruesome choice of weapon, suggests an intent to not only kill but to inflict severe harm. Moreover, the deliberate nature of Burke's actions, from her prolonged presence at the scene to her seemingly celebratory reaction, challenges conventional explanations of motive or reasoning. Witness statements and police reports further contribute to the disturbing picture. At the time of her arrest, Burke was clapping inside her home, an act she later described to investigators as an expression of happiness. When questioned about her father's death, she reportedly stated that it needed to happen, hinting at a profound sense of inevitability or personal justification for her actions. These statements, combined with her reference to the act of smashing windows as liberating, suggest a psychological state that may have been significantly altered or compromised. The incident's timeline adds further intrigue. Burke told officers that her father's refusal to turn off the lights triggered the attack, a seemingly minor grievance that escalated into deadly violence. She also mentioned feeling overwhelmed by external events, particularly the election results, which she claimed had amplified her emotional turmoil. Her belief that Election Day was symbolically significant and her statement about being reborn near her recent birthday only deepened the mystery surrounding her mental state. Mangino explained the legal strategies likely to emerge in this case, particularly the potential for an insanity defense. He clarified the difference between insanity and mental illness, two distinct concepts in criminal law. Insanity, he noted, requires proof that the defendant could not differentiate between right and wrong at the time of the crime, operating under a complete disconnect from reality. For instance, an insane individual might believe their victim was a threat, such as a wild animal or alien, justifying their actions in their mind. Insanity defenses are rare and even more rarely successful, as they demand a high burden of proof. In contrast, a defense based on mental illness does not absolve a defendant of guilt, but may reduce their culpability or influence sentencing. Mangino explained that if Burke were found to have understood her actions were wrong, but was so burdened by mental illness that she could not control her impulses, this might serve as a mitigating factor. Some states allow for a plea of guilty but mentally ill, which acknowledges both the crime and the mental health challenges involved. From the prosecution's perspective, the case is equally challenging. Prosecutors are likely to emphasize Burke's calculated and chilling behavior, portraying her actions as premeditated and malicious. Her decision to sit beside her father as he died, her acknowledgement that she felt relief after ensuring he was dead, and her subsequent destructive outburst with the windows can be framed as evidence of a clear intent to kill. The prosecution might argue that these actions demonstrate not insanity but malice and a hardened heart, countering any claims of diminished responsibility due to mental illness. The crime's familial context further complicates the narrative. The alleged murder of a parent, particularly one with significant health challenges, as neighbors described Timothy Burke, adds an emotional weight that may influence both jury perception and legal arguments. The affidavit's descriptions of Burke's actions striking, biting and strangling her father underscore the degree of violence involved, suggesting a level of rage or detachment beyond ordinary comprehension. Burke's subsequent remarks to investigators also provide a disturbing glimpse into her mindset. She reportedly expressed regret that she acted too soon, indicating an awareness of her actions and their consequences. However, her statement that killing her father was an act of liberation further muddies the waters, blurring the line between premeditation and psychological disturbance. The case raises broader societal questions about the intersections of mental health, familial conflict, and extreme acts of violence. Burke's references to the election results as a stressor, her symbolic view of Election Day, and her strained relationship with her father hint at deeper psychological and emotional struggles. Whether these factors will be considered as mitigating circumstances or dismissed as irrelevant to her culpability will be central to the trial's outcome. As the case proceeds, it will likely draw attention not only to Burke's actions but also to larger issues surrounding the legal system's treatment of mental health and its role in determining criminal responsibility. The trial promises to be as complex and troubling as the events that led to it, forcing all involved to navigate a harrowing blend of violence, psychology, and law. The next portion of the case, referenced at the 607 mark, delves into chilling details directly from the affidavit, painting a deeply unsettling and graphic picture of the events. According to Corey Burke's statement, she confessed that after her father's body went limp during the attack, she felt an overwhelming sense of relief. In her own words, this marked a turning point in her emotional state. However, her actions did not end there. Corey admitted to striking her father multiple times on the head with the ice pickaxe, ensuring his death. What followed was equally disturbing. Corey reportedly sat down next to her father's lifeless body, observing him closely as he lay dying, waiting until she was completely certain he was no longer breathing. This deliberate pause, marked by her calm observation, adds a grim layer to the already horrific sequence of events. After confirming her father's death, Corey proceeded to act in ways that she later described as an act of liberation. She ascended the stairs in her home and systematically shattered every window in the house. When asked about this behavior during her subsequent interrogation, Corey explained that breaking the windows symbolized freedom for her, a statement that offers a glimpse into her mindset at the time but raises more questions than answers. Following this series of violent and erratic actions, Corey Burke was arrested and formally charged with first-degree murder, an offense that suggests premeditation and intentionality. Her case is now at the center of a complex and layered legal and psychological debate. An insanity defense, Mangino explained, requires proof that the accused was unable to comprehend the difference between right and wrong at the time of the crime. For example, they might believe their victim was an alien or some otherworldly threat, justifying their actions within their distorted reality. Insanity defenses are rare and difficult to prove. They require not only evidence of severe mental illness, but also that this illness completely disconnected the individual from reality at the time of the crime. In contrast, Mangino described how mental illness might play a different role. Mental illness doesn't absolve someone of responsibility for their actions, but it can serve as a mitigating factor during sentencing. For instance, some states allow defendants to plead guilty but mentally ill. which acknowledges their culpability but also takes into account their mental state at the time. This plea comes with its own set of sentencing guidelines and can impact the severity of the punishment. The discussion then shifted back to Corey's behavior at the crime scene. Sierra highlighted a particularly unsettling detail. When first responders arrived, they found Corey clapping. During her interrogation, she explained that she was clapping out of happiness, feeling a sense of satisfaction that her father had been killed. This reaction speaks volumes about her mental state. A response like clapping and describing her actions as necessary and liberating could indicate a detachment from reality. It raises serious questions about her sanity at the time of the crime. However, the legal threshold for insanity is high, and her defense team will need to demonstrate that she was unable to distinguish between right and wrong, not just that she was mentally unwell. The affidavit paints a grim and haunting picture. After attacking her father, Corey remained by his side as he struggled for his last breaths. She watched him die, ensuring that her actions were final and irreversible. Prosecutors are likely to emphasize this detail, arguing that it demonstrates malice, intent, and premeditation. Prosecutors will frame this as cold and calculated. They'll argue that her decision to sit and watch her father die, rather than seeking help or stopping her attack, underscores her intent to kill. It's a powerful narrative for the prosecution to present to a jury, especially given the familial relationship between the accused and the victim. However, Mangino also pointed out that the defense could use the same details to argue that her actions were the result of a severe mental health crisis. Her behavior breaking windows, clapping, and describing her actions as liberating suggests a woman in the midst of a breakdown. Whether it meets the legal standard for insanity is a separate question, but there's no doubt that mental health will play a central role in this case. Adding to the complexity is Corey's claim that the attack was partly motivated by frustration over political disagreements with her father, including his refusal to turn off the lights in their home. This detail, while seemingly minor, may provide insight into the escalating tension and fractured relationship that preceded the murder. As the case moves forward, the legal battle will likely hinge on these competing narratives, whether Corey's actions were driven by calculated malice or the uncontrollable impulses of a disturbed mind. Both the prosecution and the defense face significant challenges in presenting their cases to a jury, ensuring this trial will remain both tragic and compelling to follow. Stay glued to this channel, share your thoughts on the story, like and subscribe to the channel. Until next episode, when we bring you more crime stories, stay vigilant.